Okay, everything in godliness has been telling us about these characters and their family, going all the way back to the old Bentleys and the four sons that were killed in the Civil War, how Jesse came to power, and he has his daughter, and he's miserable with the daughter. He always wanted a son, David, and he gets this grandson, David. But it's all building up to these scenes where Jesse takes his grandson, David, out into the woods, and he's going to behave like an Abraham, actually, from Abraham and Isaac. Remember, Abraham has the son Isaac he has waited so long for in the Bible, and then God tells him, take your son, your only son, and kill him. And Abraham doesn't want to do it, but he does. He takes his son Isaac out into the wilderness, and just as he's about to kill Isaac, an angel swoops in and tells him, no, sacrifice this sheep instead. So Jesse is busy playing out these biblical stories, and David's lived a fairly happy life from the age of 12 at the farm, but these are, I think, understandably terrifying to him when his grandfather, Jesse, takes him out into the wilderness and starts to pray in a loud voice over him. And David is a boy, and he's terrified. Crouching beneath the tree, he watched the man on the ground before him, and his own knees began to tremble. It seemed to him he was in the presence not only of his grandfather, but of something else, someone who might hurt him, someone who was not kindly, but dangerous and brutal. Indeed, the grandfather has become other than himself. When he's gripped by the fanaticism this way, he becomes what he wants. He wants to be an Abraham. He wants to be a patriarch who's willing to sacrifice his grandson here to God to get God's favor. He wants, remember, to be extraordinary in God's eyes. So David, the child, begins to cry. He's terrified. Meanwhile, Jesse's crying out, "Make a sign to me, God," he cried. "Here I stand with the boy David. Come down to me out of the sky and make thy presence known to me." David is crying in fear, shaking himself loose from the hands that held him, and runs away through the forest. He did not believe that the man who turned up his face and a harsh voice shouted at the sky was his grandfather at all. It's like his grandfather's been taken possession of. The man did not look like his grandfather. So he's absolutely terrifying his grandson. And it all ends, this first scene like this ends with the boy tripping over the root of a tree, and he's barely conscious, and he's saying to his grandfather, "Take me away, there's a terrible man back there in the woods." And Jesse takes this, instead of feeling like, oh gosh, what have I done to this poor child, Jesse looked away over the tops of the trees, and again his lips cried out to God, "What have I done that thou dost not approve of me?" So everything he sees is a sign of him not getting what he wants. He's demanding this recognition from God, and he's not getting it. So it's so problematic. I think the boy is right to be afraid of him. I'll come back to this. This is Louise's story, but I want to go to the end. The story of Louise is quite sad, and obviously she grows up deeply troubled. I'm going to skip to the next scene where Jesse tries to use David to get God's recognition, the next Abraham and Isaac scene, as it were, and this is the final story. It's where the story comes to an end. When David Hardy was a tall boy of 15, he, like his mother, had an adventure, I'm not sure I would call it that changed the whole current of his life and sent him out of his quiet corner into the world. So it retells about how he came to live with his grandfather Jesse and left his mother Louise. And it tells us how David had gone hunting with his friends, and he made himself a sling with rubber bands and a forked stick, and he went off by himself to gather nuts. So he likes to go off and he likes to gather nuts and shoot things with a sling. Now, interesting is that his grandfather, Jesse, had wanted a David that would become a ruler, but he also keeps playing out the story of Abraham and Isaac from the Bible, the patriarch who's willing to sacrifice his son/grandson to God in order to gain God's favor, in order to show that he'd do anything to gain God's trust, as he sees it, because he's very egotistical. He doesn't think of it as sacrifice, but as everything's about gain, about getting things that he wants. And remember, we'd said he always wants and never feels as if he's gotten what he wanted. But the fact that David makes a sling and becomes very good with it brings up another story of David, and that is in the Bible, that where David rises actually to power because he's quite good with a sling, and they put him against Goliath, a giant who's a warrior and has killed many, and this small boy with his little slingshot kills the giant. So it's interesting that that's the biblical son that Jesse gets, and that is the boy that will, with a slingshot, knock out the giant. Because what happens is Jesse goes on another one of his let's go out into the wilderness with the son/grandson and talk to God moments. So Jesse grabs a sheep, a lamb that had been born out of season, and he gives the sheep to David. This is so like Abraham and Isaac, where Isaac is clutching a little lamb, and Abraham's like, "Hi, baby, come on, let's go out into the wilderness, and I've got this big knife for no reason. Don't worry about it." And Isaac is like, "I'm not so sure I like this situation." That's the situation here. Poor little David holding a lamb, the sacrificial lamb, and his grandfather Jesse driving him out into the wilderness. Jesse starts to erect a pile of burning sticks in some lonely place in the woods, and he's going to offer up the body of the lamb as a blood sacrifice and a burnt offering to God, as in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. But he's also got a knife to kill the lamb, and the child David, I think rightly, begins to panic. So the whole thing comes to a head when the boy sat on the ground with the lamb in his arms. His imagination began to invest every movement of the old man with significance, and he became every moment more afraid. Who can blame him? Jesse says, "I must put the blood of the lamb on the head of the boy," he mutters, when the sticks begin to blaze. So he's got this fire burning out in the wilderness. He takes a long knife from his pocket and he starts to rapidly walk across the clearing towards David, who's clutching the lamb. And I don't need to tell you that David absolutely panics. He's just sitting there, and this grandfather is coming at him with a fire burning behind him, and he's got a long knife, and he's about to kill something, right? So terror seized the soul of the boy. He was sick with it. He starts running. His grandfather's running after him with the long knife held tightly in his hand. So David picks up a stone, puts it in his slingshot, he draws back the sling, and he hits his grandfather Jesse in the middle of the head and knocks him out. So it's interesting because it's Abraham and Isaac, but it's also David and Goliath, right? Where the boy has killed the giant, as it were, the fanatic that is Jesse. With a groan, Jesse pitched forward and fell almost at the boy's feet. When David saw that, he lay still, and that he was apparently dead. His fright increased immeasurably. It became an insane panic. So David's got this crazed guy running at him with a long knife, talking about blood and burning things, and he knocks him out with his slingshot, and then he thinks, "Lord, I've killed him." With a cry, David turned and ran off through the woods, weeping convulsively. "I don't care. I killed him, but I don't care." He ran on, and he decided he would never go back again to the Bentley Farms or to the town of Winesburg. "I have killed the man of God, and now I will myself be a man and go into the world." It's interesting because Jesse had wanted all along this son, David, and he thinks that he's got the way to get that. By his actions, what he has done is he has created a David who's knocked out Goliath, and will now go out into the world and make his own way. David will never return to Winesburg, Ohio, even though we hear at the very beginning of the story that David's father tries very hard to look for him and never finds him. David thinks that he's killed Jesse. He panics, much like actually Enoch when he almost killed his father. There seems to be a thing with sons killing fathers in this story, right? Although I can understand why David shot at Jesse. He thinks Jesse's dead. Note that Jesse is not dead. He's knocked out. When Jesse, on the ground by the creek, Jesse Bentley moved uneasily about. It actually, from David's perspective, the story is hard to read in this sense because David absolutely is convinced that Jesse's dead, and so it can lead you to think that Jesse's dead. He leaves Winesburg, Ohio, convinced that he's killed the man of God and he has to make his own way. Meanwhile, back in the wilderness, Jesse is coming out of having been knocked out, and he is slightly less egotistical after this. They ask him what happened and where David is, and the only thing they can ever get out of him, whenever David's name was mentioned, he looked vaguely at the sky and said that a messenger from God had taken the boy. It happened because I was too greedy for glory, he declared, and would have no more say in the matter. So it's interesting here, he realizes he was too greedy for glory. On the other hand, he still believes he's important enough that God would send, say, an angel down to take David from him. It's a very sad story of generational violence. We learn, let me go scroll earlier up to Louise. I would spend more time on her, but we don't have a lot of time. She was sent by her father, who never wanted her, to live with the Hardy family, where she's disliked by everyone because she's so good in school, and the father in that family chastises his own daughters that they're not as smart as Louise, who works really hard. It's again another family that's dysfunctional and filled with hatred and recrimination and not enough love. Poor Louise is so desperate for love that she wants someone to love her, so she invites the son in the family, John Hardy, into her bedroom and has sex with him, and they get married, which is how David is born. Although it's made clear that I want someone to love me, she says. I want to love someone. And John Hardy takes this as sex, but she just desperately wants love, but she will never feel loved. She is never able to feel loved, which is what leads to her becoming a terror to everyone around her. And poor John lives a miserable life with her. David, her son, lives a miserable life with her, all because she just wants to be loved, and she hooks up with this guy John and gets married to him in hopes that she'll be loved, but she never manages to feel loved, and she makes everyone around her suffer as a result. So the story here is about the fanaticism of Jesse. It's about the way other people around the family members who are fanatics are crushed by it. It's about how Louise can never let go of the fact that she wasn't loved by her father because she was a girl instead of a boy. It's about poor David, who's convinced, he just can't believe that he didn't kill Jesse. He never even checks the newspaper to see if Jesse's dead. So everyone here is just grabbing onto a truth willy-nilly and not letting it go, and doing damage to themselves and also to the people around them. It's a very sad story. It's an interesting sort of character study. You can see the sort of psychology of generations of violence and lack of empathy and desire, passion in them, and the damage that it's done. I suppose it's created some good things too, a beautiful farm, a nice house that Louise lives in with John Hardy and her son David, who goes out into the world and makes his way. But the emotions and the feelings that got them here were painful. And so that is the story of godliness. Godliness made grotesque in this case, because it was not truly godliness, it was ego in Jesse's case. Louise, just disappointment, and in the case of David, just a conviction that he's done what he's done and there's no going back. He's killed the man of God and he must leave Winesburg. And that's the story of godliness.